So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We are delighted to be welcoming a truly distinguished figure in natural health and wellness, Jason Watkin. With more than 20 years of a multidisciplinary study spanning traditional Chinese medicine, biology, microbiology, biochemistry, and psychology, Jason combines a depth of knowledge with a passion for empowering people towards optimal health. You'll experience that for sure later. As a master of both ancient wisdom and modern science, Jason leads product development and education at Purica, while also captivating audiences as a public speaker. He's dedicated to bridging holistic, allopathic, and alternative approaches to get to the root cause of stress, discontent, and disease. So, pretty exciting stuff. We hope that you guys enjoy his talk tonight, and you can all help me welcome Jason Watkin.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And for anybody who doesn't know that this store is pretty progressive across Canada, we're actually giving you information. I think I might have said that last year. There's a few stores across Canada that really take time to almost be like a clinic experience where you actually get some pretty knowledgeable staff that actually live it. So, of course I would come here. I just did a big tour. Some of you might have heard I went to, I was traveling across BC and Alberta, and then I went to Ottawa. Anybody familiar with the health charter tour that just went across Canada? So they're basically Sean Buckley, the lawyer, who is the foremost legal expert in all of North America on regulatory affairs in Canada and the US. He's represented more companies than any other ones combined basically in the last 20 years. He made it his mission basically to just promote health freedom. And so as things are changing a lot, I'm going to be talking about that tonight. There's major changes happening across the board in medicine right now. And it's already happening, you can't change it. It's super exciting and super stressful at the same time, depending on how you look at it. But I want to bring out the positive side of it, and then what is going to come, and then why it's kind of been the way it has been for the last 120 years, what it was like before. So it'd be different than last year's presentation for everybody that saw me. I focus a lot on stress and what stress does. So I'll touch on that for a couple of minutes. And I always try to make people laugh because you don't want to stress people out talking about stress. I talk about that. So this is, for me, this is super exciting. Before I get into this, we were offered the equivalent of basically my brother and I are in partnership together. I've always been interested in health. I was going to go into medicine. I did an experimental program with Western and Eastern medicine combined. And I realized that the clinic experience was not something that I really appreciated for myself, because I saw we were treating primarily autoimmune progressive conditions. And whatever you thought that would be really good for the person to do, that was free or change their lifestyle, then they would come back, and then when you asked them, almost no one had done anything. All they wanted to do was pills, capsules, get a diagnosis, acupuncture, massage, whatever. And for me, I don't know, I feel like my whole pulse, I think, through my life is I would like to empower people so they can do it themselves instead of becoming an expert. So to me, that was like the expert thing, and I didn't like it, but I can talk. I got that from my mom, I think. Anyway, and R&D, the research part of it. So I'll talk a bit about where the recovery came from, and now we're talking about it a lot more again. We went on a long tangent with medicinal mushrooms, because medicinal mushrooms as a category should be the top of everything in every medicine. The amount of research in the Western style, plus the ancient use, it blows almost everything else away. The problem is standardizing growth and where it occurs, and that they suck up everything in the environment because they're like a sponge, and then you take that. So it's radiation, chemicals, heavy metals, everything. So you have to grow them in pristine environments, because we're not living 2,000 years ago where everything was clean. So I'm talking about recovery again. This leads me into what I was going to say. So we have been offered massive amounts of money for our company Purica over the last few years. We've always turned it down. The last one, my brother's not from this industry. Recovery cured his eczema, and then mom and dad put a mortgage on their house, and we started this company with zero experience 26 years ago. So it never was a business thing. It was all about, this is so exciting, but we don't know what we're doing. Anyway, it leads to a completely different experience of how you present and why you're in the business. So my brother, this offer was too big, and my brother and I, we don't see eye to eye on certain things like anybody, especially over the last few years. It's a different kind of ways of thinking. So he really wanted to sell. And I said, well, I don't. And he said, I figured you'd say that. But the offer was equivalent to basically, in the end, over a couple of years, would be the equivalent of each of us getting about 40 mil each after taxes. So this proves to me that it's not about money. It's never been about the money for me ever in this thing. I just want to pay my bills, get rid of my debt, and I feel like my time is now. I've done over 3,000 presentations. All the first ones for the first few years were to medical doctors, vets, and pharmacists. And the reason being is I wanted to prove that the ancient medicine, you could see the methodology and it made a lot of sense. But modern medicine was taken over by a certain methodology for the last 120 years. I won't get into all the politics of that. I could get into a lot of, we're doing it, by the way, if you hear me speaking, we just started a podcast called Swallow the Truth. It's on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. And we're gonna start promoting it soon. And we're getting some really key guests. I just did an interview last week with the Director of Research of the HeartMath Institute, Dr. Roland McCready. And then he wants to partner with us. They're super excited about what we're doing. We're excited about what they're doing. Anybody heard of the HeartMath Institute? Right? Okay, so we're now partnering up. So they're exchanging emails back and forth. They want to get different programs together. We'll be doing more with them and other affiliates. It's basically, in a nutshell, for anybody that doesn't know about it, it's the research they've been doing since '96 that's now getting mainstream with medical doctors, is that the heart should rule the head according to rhythms. They measure the rhythms, they measure electromagnetic field and electricity pulse outside and inside the body. They expose you to different emotions and that, see how it affects your brain impulse and what that does to your heart rhythm. It doesn't just change the rapidity, it actually causes gaps, right? Defibrillations, things like that, when the head rules the heart. Anybody can see it's really funny. I was doing a lecture in Moncton just a week and a half ago, and everybody that was talking, they weren't natural speakers per se. They'd spoken a lot, but not in front of a big crowd. And so the first guy said, oh, my pulse is going crazy, he's sweating. And then everybody kept doing that. And then I went up, this is the perfect chance to talk about what the HeartMath Institute is talking about. Anybody who has cardiology or cardiovascular issues, they typically expose you to some type, or they're trying to get you to do something that can calm your heart down and your breathing rate down, because they know that obviously influences it. So this is a big part of our company. So I said no, and then we had to get massive loans to pay out my brother's family. But I don't feel, it didn't bother me at all, because I know right now where we're at and where things are going, and it's unstoppable. Before I do this presentation then, and I'm going to cover some of the medicines like recovery, which was formulated under ancient practices and principles, and why it does so many things, plus the medicinal mushrooms. Shilajit, these are things I can cover pretty quickly after that. And then also the probiotics that we use, which are human strains, 1 a day, heat stable, but what they do are impressive. First I want to talk about, some of you probably are familiar, I don't know how many people have gone down rabbit holes, right? Once you go down some, you can't escape it. Is that's what's happening now. I like to talk about it, the last 5 years, it doesn't matter what anybody believes. But what it did for anybody that's gone down rabbit holes for a long, long time. Me was 25 years ago when we had to go to battle with Health Canada, which we won in a big way. They got caught lying to the Department of Justice. So we went to battle, we're not afraid to go to battle, but when I went down the rabbit holes, I don't sleep and I go really far, and if they give a source material, I try to buy the source material, so the library is huge, going back thousands of years sometimes. My idea was, what's at the root of this? Can you know everything? No. There's like 5D chess people are playing. I don't even know what's going on. But there's certain things that are happening. In medicine, it's key. The ancient medicines had already proved themselves over thousands of years. Like the Ayurvedic medicine based on the Vedic tradition. The Chinese medicine system based on the Taoist system. The Tibetan medicine based on the Buddhist and Zen shamanic tradition. and then the trans-Himalayan traditions based on shamanic traditions, they had to prove themselves. If something didn't work, they got rid of it or they didn't get paid. In Chinese medicine, for a long part of the history, you did not get paid unless you were healthy, the clinician. So he encouraged, obviously, you to participate in all that. Western medicine basically taking it out and saying you can do what you want, just take this drug. That's not medicine, nor is it health, nor is it anything that would relate to anything in the ancient times. They would think you're crazy. But that's what we did for 120 years when, I'll get close on this, because this is not what this lecture is about, but it's kind of a fun history. And it's all ending right now, and it's unstoppable. By the way, I'll first touch on that. Do you know why it's ending right now? Why you can talk about anything, almost even Bigfoot if you want, when you couldn't do that 10 years ago, except with select groups of people? Because 20 years ago, I was invited as an expert on the Standing Committee on Health in Ottawa. I said, 25 years ago, sorry, in the next 20 to 25 years, the whole industry, pharmaceutical industry, is going to implode. I studied pharmacology because all their patents are expiring. Everything is going to go generic. Then, when I went to a big investment firm, I might have said this years before, is I'm not good with money. I'm better with money now, but I wasn't. And my parents were worried about that. So I went to an investment thing they told me to go to, and one of the speakers represented the pharmaceutical industry. Because anybody who has an investment portfolio, that's usually a part of your portfolio, unless you asked it not to be. So they said the same thing that I had already said in Ottawa, that all the patents are expiring on all the key drug classes. So what are we going to do? They're not worried about it. You know what they said that can happen? What is the drug class then that they're going to focus on? What we just saw go through the last 5 years is vaccines. Because vaccines or related compounds, which is that, they're quick to put out, quicker than other drugs. And they said the only issue right now is the regulatory environment, and we will deal with that. We're confident we can deal with that, to basically truncate the length of time you had to do the studies. That just happened. But that's going to fail. They know that. So they've got a window to make a lot of money on this, but it's already opened the can of worms, and now everybody's questioning everything. Not everybody, but more and more people are questioning everything. So what does that mean? That means, I said back then 25 years, the pharmaceutical industry, like in Germany in the 80s, are going to start buying up our industry. That's what's already happening. So for instance, here's two companies that are actually primarily pharmaceutical money that you all know of, that are buying a lot, most of the pet industry, the vet clinics, our industry. Do you know who those two companies are? Okay, think chocolate. Think way back since the 70s, 60s. They've been around and longer. Pardon? Nestle's one. And the other one? So Nestle is a big umbrella company that buys other companies that's owned by equity firms, that's owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. So it's a whole chain, but it all goes back to a couple, right? The other one's really weird, because you wouldn't think they'd be a buying entity, is Mars Bar. So Mars Bar and Nestle are buying a ton, but really they're just front companies. And once they start buying up our industry, this is like the doom and gloom. Oh my God, we're getting bought up by all of them. They'll just cheap out on everything, which they've been doing. But it means that they're going to start promoting this industry again. For instance, McNeil, who makes Tylenol, is now making a curcumin supplement. And now they're going to start promoting curcumin. Kind of timely for them when Tylenol is getting hit so hard, which it deservedly should. It causes more liver failure deaths than any other drug combined every year for decades. I wrote a paper on that 20 years ago. And it's available in gas stations and everything. You can buy wherever you want. So the idea is, the exciting part of this is they're going to start promoting it. Because for 120 years, there's been a mass campaign to put money and profits into censoring this industry. That was the only thing that kept it down to, oh, those people are black sheep. It's not that at all anymore. The whole thing has changed, and there's no way out of it for them. So they're buying it up. But then there's going to remain companies that are left that actually want to help. And I hope that you see that. I don't, actually, you know what? I just hope that I say something today that triggers something in you about something, because there's going to be companies left that are producing really amazing products. So my idea here is getting back to this. That's why I'm excited. That's why I turned down the offer. For 25 years, I've been talking about what stress does, and it's the root of almost everything. And what do I mean by that? Before I get into this presentation, I want to do this really quick. The stress response, we all know of the 2 F's, the fight or flight. And then there's freeze and fawn. Those are the 2 more insidious ones now that have been added over the last decade or so in a large way. Fight is this response. I do this quick. I usually spend more time. Fight is associated with hostility, anger, hatred. How often do we get in fights? But anything lesser by definition that causes anger causes the same response in your body, albeit at different levels. What's a lesser form of anger? I usually say this one. Everybody participate in this one. It starts with an I, the word. Most of us get this way, sometimes even in our dreams. And irritation. Irritation, frustration, tension, impatience, judgment of ourselves or others, resentment, that's a big one. Because you carry resentment inside and you don't do anything with it. It causes but even in your body you can feel the tension accumulating. You go to a therapist, your body's holding it, your mind's holding it, waiting to lash out almost. Here's a good one about that. Have you guys all heard that white and the black wolf legend? So it's basically First Nations people, right? And the grandfather's talking to the grandson, said there's a white wolf and a black wolf fighting for your attention inside you. And the white wolf represents beauty and openness and wisdom and love and compassion, all those beautiful things, right? The black wolf, this is the way that's normally told to here. The black wolf represents anger, hostility, ferocity, all that kind of impatience, all this kind of thing. Then the grandson says, which one wins? And the grandfather says, according to the way it's told colloquially, whichever one you feed. So in your mind, the stress or non-stress version. But that is not the way they told it in ancient times, nor would it be the way they tell it in any ancient culture. The way it was told was, which one wins, or which one do you feed? That's what he asked, which one do you feed? And the grandfather says, you feed them both. Because each of those wolves has a positive side. Right, in ancient times they had passive and active forces, masculine and feminine, right, mixed with those. It's just metaphors. It doesn't mean that, you know what I mean? It's not that a woman is this way, because you see a lot of women that are the opposite of what you think. Women aren't the same as men. That's just a passive way of speaking. So the wolf, the anger, ferocity, impatience, all that, if you don't grab a whole bunch of thoughts on it, about who I should be mad at, why I'm mad, all that stuff, and you just go with the flow of energy, the energy there is intense amount of confidence. So the black wolf also represents confidence, precision, skill and means, and active force. If you don't feed that, the negative side is waiting to get fed, and in the first chance, it'll lash out. You ever see those people? They're all about peace, love, positivity, but then they get provoked with one thing, they lash out and spew, because the black wolf's not getting fed. They're acting like you're supposed to just suppress, right? So that's the idea. If you get irritated, frustrated, impatient, resentment, and it's in you, it doesn't matter if it's justified or not, your body thinks you want to fight. And the things I'll talk about what it does in a sec. The other one is fear. The flight response. How many times are we running away from somebody? I'm going a little bit longer, sorry for you who've heard me before. The flight response is a lesser form of fear. You usually have to say women will know this one. Mothers, sorry. Starts with a W. A lesser form of fear by definition. Worry, yeah. So when you get worried, anxious, panicky, all those things, that's a fear response. Your body thinks you want to run. Right? And avoidance. And then freeze response is too much information, I can't handle this anymore. This is an insidious one. Because that's when people will give up their power to somebody else. The fight or flight, you still maintain power. The freeze response, you're giving because you can't take it anymore. Right? So you give it up, you say, okay, give it up to a podcaster who knows about football, and you let them talk about your whole life. It's weird, but human beings do it. They learned this in Guantanamo. Dealing with supposed terrorists, right? That pain and humiliation don't work, because they'll tell you whatever they need to do. Sometimes, yeah, but These are horrible things I'm talking about, but this is where it came from. They found out that how do you break a person so they'll tell you the truth? You keep on changing the rules and you do it over a prolonged period of time and you flip back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. 83%, 83 point something percent of people will just go, oh, and give up and just tell you whatever you want to know. The weird part was, that's the freeze response. Even I joke about it, you have a bunch of forms of magnesium and finally say, I don't even know what I'm supposed to take. Okay, then what happened though, this is the weird part, because this is social engineering actively. Which, by the way, I don't know if you knew this, but the Canadian military and government and the American military and government admitted they were doing that to all of us the last 5 years, openly. That's open. They were using social engineering. And these techniques that they learned, that's open, you can look it up. They even were talking about it and nobody cared, it was weird. But I guess because you don't know what that actually means, so you think, yeah, whatever, you needed to do it. So the idea is, where was I right now? Lost myself. The freeze, right? Yeah, when the people who had been lying to them and doing experiments finally said this was an experiment, that's not actually true. Almost none of them would then listen to that person. And you think about this too, when you have felt like you're so overwhelmed, I don't even want to have to think anymore, I can't think it, and someone tells you new information that blows up I can't do this. Most people don't want to hear it, they just will do it. Like a political figure. If a political figure that someone believes in gets caught doing something horrible that's undeniable, over 80% of people will dig their heels in and defend them. It's because we don't want to have to do all that work and everything. I don't even know what's going on. That leads to the next one, the fawn response, which is faking. I'm talking about all this because I want to talk about what it does to your body and then talk about the positive side. The faking one is, I don't know, if I say this, they're probably going to get upset, or they'll probably say this, and then you think in your head, how do I need to say this to somebody so they won't react, whether it be a person you work with or a friend or family member? You figure it out. Oh, I got it. And then the person you address, you say that I got a shot. I say it, but you don't really believe it. They know you don't believe it, and they react, and you can still feel it because they can sense, like animals, that you're being inauthentic. Even if you think it's a great technique, it's going to work. You're trying not to have a fight, and they can sense it. That leads into the whole idea of what does it do, and then I want to get back to authenticity, which is the biggest word of all. As the heart math, when your body's going to fight, what do you need first? Do you need your digestion or your immune system or kidney function or detox, cleansing, nourishing, anything when all you want to do is survive in the moment? None of those things. So say, I use this joke, say you're at your house and everything's fine, or right here, right now, everything's beautiful, wonderful, and then you look at the door and all of a sudden that person is coming and you feel what happens to your body. Your body feels like it wants to punch that person, throw them down, run away, or pretend you're not there. That's what your body's physiologically gearing up for. So you punch all your blood flow to the extremities so you can fight or run. So the legs and arms get the blood flow. Just like a hose, when you push the pressure, shoots the blood, so your blood pressure goes up. That's why they talk in cardiology, you got to get control of that. The other thing is, there's a good chance, this is theorizing in modern medicine and science. You have a good chance you're going to get cut when you're fighting or running. So your clotting factors go up. So increased risk of stroke, platelet aggregation, aneurysms, things like that. Also, you need a ton of sugar for the energy for the muscles. If you don't use it, which we're not, because we're just standing here with somebody that we don't like their opinion. Yeah, that kind of thing. Inside your bodies, all the cholesterol levels, so stress hormones go up, because they're all based on cholesterol. Changes your whole blood lipid profile. Blood sugar shoots up. You're not using it. What happens to it? It binds up on the side of your blood vessels. It's called glycation. It damages them. Cholesterol and minerals form along that, and then your body. Remember this too. If you're worried about heart conditions, and they talk about angioplasty, the balloon. There's a difference between getting cut or injured on your hand. That forms like a scab, right? And then it heals over. But imagine if that happened in your blood vessels the same way, what could happen? That could break off and lead to a stroke or something like that. So your body starts with a plaque formation made of minerals, cholesterols, and other things then it forms the intimal lining of the blood vessel, grows over top of that. So the plaque is not actually inside the blood vessel, it's inside the wall of the blood vessel. That's why they put those balloons and pump it up. That squeezes that, so it makes a thick little ball inside and squeezes it so it's longer, so that you get more blood flow. It's not helping it. By the way, bromelain and nattokinase if you take them on an empty stomach, they're in the store, different companies have them. Empty stomach, they actually will break down those plaques. So does vitamin K2, MK7. It breaks them up to get the calcium out of them, the ones going to your brain and everything. So if you're worried about brain, or you're worried about losing your memory and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things like that, but also you're worried about damaging blood vessels, take K2, MK7, it's in here too, different companies, and it will help to get the calcium, pull it out, pull it into the bones so it builds your bones. Get stronger bones, and it cleans out your blood vessels. So you get better blood flow to your head and all parts of your body. So you're talking about mental function, but also blood flow everywhere. Okay, so back to this. Authenticity. So that's some of the things. Also, all of your digestive modes, the mucosal membranes through your whole body, your genitourinary tract, your lungs, your digestive, they're all broken down. And if you're not stressed and you don't sleep well, they're not repaired. This is the most crucial for all the development of all the other conditions. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, bacterial infections, low immunity, problematic immunity, low energy. All that's related to things getting in your blood that never should be in there in the first place. What stops that normally is your mucosal moat. I usually touch on this too, and then I'll get into this presentation because I feel like I had to get the guts here. Is wherever there's a hole in your body, inside is a sac or a tube. Inside that sac or the tube is not part of your body, it's part of the outside environment. Like a hose without water I usually use, all the stuff in there could be crud and hot, things like that, but all the air is the air out there. Same as here. That's how all these microbes can live in there and your immune system doesn't attack it. What walls it off from your body is the mucosal moat, like aloe vera gel. That is constantly being broken down and constantly regenerating if you sleep and are not stressed. If you're stressed and you're not sleeping, keeps breaking down, things start getting in your blood that live in your tract, food particles, things you breathe that should never be there. Also, this is a key one for women and men, but women especially, is that yeast infections. Yeast is not a problematic organism when it's in its single-celled state. It gives you a whole bunch of benefits on your skin, inside. When you're stressed and that mucosa breaks down, yeast, like some other bacteria, are called pleomorph, or there's pleomorphism. That means they change their shape and structure according to the environment, and then they root underneath, and then it's very difficult to get rid of. So you come chronic urinary tract infections, chronic yeast infections, bladder infections, you treat them and it works for a while, then they come back with a vengeance, or other problems start because the mucosa is not regenerating. What's the underlying issue? Stress. It could be psychological, emotional, physical stress you're dealing with, even tension when you have to deal with the back issue, which all of us, if you have to deal with that all the time, you're always compensating. There's always stress hormones in your nervous system is active. By the way, the nervous system is active before the stress hormone. Hormones come after the nervous system. You know we're getting into hormones finally? But the nervous system precedes the hormones. So eventually we'll get to nervous system, that's where mushrooms come in. And other nervines, they help to calm the nerves. So the nerves, you don't react so quickly, and then your hormones don't surge, stress hormones. So first is nerves. Maybe if we get into next one, now we'll get into a little bit of this. We talk about stress, what it does. I could get into a lot more than that. But stress causes damage, which causes inflammation, which causes pain, spasm, and all your conditions that you get labeled with, including mental health. Because a lot of mental health is lack of blood sugar control and lack of blood circulation, and then you give drugs that make it worse. Anyways, let's go to the next slide there. We can go past this one too. Oh, authenticity, I was going to talk about heart math before we get into this. So the Heart Math Institute found, they were testing all these different emotions. These are ancient practices, right? About how different parts of the body, different exercises, modern or ancient, affect your heart rhythm. And how that affects your brain rhythm, or things that try to induce the brain function to change the heart rhythm, this kind of thing. So, you know this one practice, Anjali, that you see Indian people doing, right? they learned that if you touch a part of your body, the ancients talked about, if you touch any part of your body, it brings attention to that part of the body. So your mind is attending to that, even mildly. If you can focus in rhythm with your breath and focus intention to that part of the body, you get out of your head and into the body. That's what a lot of these practices are for, right? Everybody says, I don't want to get in my body. I think about body all the time. I hate it. That's in your head thinking about your body. You know what I mean? So the idea is get in your body. This practice, all these different practices take you and they see different changes in heart rhythm, including when you hold in the Dantian, which is in Karate and meditation. There's a certain type of thing that happens here when you hold here. When they held here, though, they found here, just holding here with your hand, whatever, focus your breath, do these certain practices they do, the heart rhythm changes, and after the heart rhythm changes, it then changes your brain rhythm. It's the opposite of the way you think. You think it's the brain rhythm changing the heart rhythm, which normally happens, but when you get out of your head, drop it down, beyond thought, so to speak, this rhythm then controls that rhythm. This rhythm is can be measured 3 feet off your body in radius, so 6 feet wide. You can measure the heart rhythm. Okay, so this is why when they measure this, then they measure the effect of other things coming into that radius. If someone you have comes into your space, you know they say, well, they're a close talker, or they came into my space, that changes your whole rhythm here and shrinks your field. It actually contracts, like you're armoring yourself for battle. But if someone comes into that, say that you like, is going to give you a hug, your actual field expands. It's measurable. And what was the number one thing that affects the strength intensity and the diameter of the radius? I hinted at it already. It's the opposite of the fawn response faking, which is inauthenticity. You're doing something because you think they'll like it, but it's not. You're not being true to yourself. If you're true to yourself and you feel good about it and you feel real and you're expressing that way, that causes the largest change in your heart field, which then affects your brain field. So I feel like authenticity, everyone's starting to finally talk about that. That's the opposite of the stress response. When you feel truly authentic, if you go to the next one here, I'll get into that then. So this ancient form of medicine, and then I'll talk about this back to authenticity. Ancient medicine was about empowering you to heal. Not just physically, but mentally, energetically. And so we're doing 3 things. Purica we do as a company. We also have the Purica Foundation that's raised a couple $1 million for children, elderly, and animals. And we send excursions. We sent one to Nepal, which you'll see, I think. Swallow the Truth is the new podcast we just started. And we're going to do lots of interviews with Adam, and I do a lot of talks. He's our director of education. Now we do a lot of cool talks on a lot of different topics, always trying to bring the bright side out, but not afraid to go in depth. But silver lining. And then Awaken Zen is, we've been working 6 years on this. We finally have beta tests ready to go next month. This is providing ancient practices, no watering down, no mixing, with a little bit of humor to help you get into this rhythm and to expand your mind, but also help you heal with all these different conditions and put you in a state that is the opposite of stress, because stress is catabolic. You're breaking your body down to fight. When you're stressed, your body's not geared to absorb and assimilate anything. No matter what you do in here, if you're still stressed, it's really hard to make a change. So these are the 3 things we're doing, and we're giving all that for free, other than our products. Yeah?
And why don't people get sick immediately when they're stressed, and people who have a non-stress, like sort of like what you think about, what I sometimes think about religion. So why aren't the people who are religious all happy and having wonderful lives, and the people who are evil having bad lives? Like, why aren't the people who don't have stress having wonderful lives, and the people who do having great? I mean, I know to a degree.
So think about this. Think about the levels. So you mentioned a good one right there. Religion. What we think of religion is really the wave surface of religion. Same as science. It's the wave surface of people who conceptually think they understand the religion versus the people that practice deeply and don't have time even to think about arguing why my religion's better than your religion. So what we think of religion is more like a distortion of religion that the masses follow. It's tribalism. Same as science. But if you drop deeply, science, religion, just a secular life, and you just want to live a good life, like someone bodum, like in Rome, it's right in the base, in the depths of the ocean. That's a different thing. So religious people can be super stressed because they're defending all the time. They're constantly waiting, same as science, constantly waiting to fight. And science is now a religion, 100%. In the way that it's practiced, according to when I heard science, because science is a materialistic reductionist dogma that takes for granted that we're built of particles that even quantum physics says do not exist. So you start at a baseline saying that everything's built of a particle. Then when you look closely at the particle, it disappears. Ever hear that saying? When I don't look at it closely, it's there. When I look at it really closely, it's not there. It's like an ancient saying, and this is pretty cool. Sorry, you digressed me. Because it all gets back to this. There's a depth of the learning, profundity. Then there's that superficial, why is this happening? And you can get into the, why is that? But a lot of people are stressed that you don't know are stressed. And for instance, when you go, this ties back to non-stress states. Say you're really stressed and people are always stressed but they never get sick. But then they go on a holiday and the whole holiday is ruined because they get sick. Stress hormones inhibit your immune system. Things just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and turn into later, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, they come up with cancer or heart disease out of nowhere. They never ever got sick. That's why. It just went really deep. And then you can't explain certain things. You know what I mean? A 5D chess kind of idea. So this idea of getting in the non-stress state is first you have to try to make it a habit through all your life, not just once in a while. It's like you should never go shopping when you're hungry idea. So these practices are meant to practice when it's quiet and then take them into your life. And I'll give an example again what you said. I was on Salt Spring and there was a really rude person came into one of the restaurants there. Anybody know Treehouse? Okay, so they were in there and the owner was there, Mark. We get along really well. This is a few years back. I said, woo, that was fun, hey? And he's like, yeah, I know. We get it. He said, you know who are the rudest people? Because he knows that I practice meditation. You know who are the rudest people? He said, the people that come back from this certain meditation retreat. What's up with that? And I said, yeah, that makes sense to me. Because people go to meditation because they want to have that. And then they have it, everything's perfect controlled environment. You feel perfect, relaxed. And then when you leave, you're just pissed off at everybody because they're ruining my balance, that kind of idea. So that makes people more angry at people. But there's also the idea of being angry at yourself because you can't maintain it. And it's like pulling it far this way, and then anyway, I feel like that explains, even in religion, all the people that want to live a perfect life, but inside their mind they know they're not. Same as science. I want to be able to understand this and I understand this, but you're arguing about something and you have to refer to experts all the time because you have no idea what it really means. What does that even mean? There's no particle? By the way, the definition of a particle now used to be that something that you can't break mentally or physically down, right? Substance of the building blocks of society and everything. Now it's a field of potential in relation to a mode of observation. That means it's totally open. And how the state of awareness or paradigm that you're in is really interesting because that's what the ancients were talking about. That's what the cross represents, by the way, in all these different traditions. Are you familiar with this? Horizontal is the way of time and space, and that's the way we live in the life normally, just like in here. And then say when you step at a time when you're in that moment, like the zone, or you're creating something, you can't even think of time anymore, this comes in. This is timelessness intersecting with time, and in that moment, you've lost all sense of time and become timeless while you're still expressing. The way they said that was living in this world but not of it. That's a non-stress state. We've all actually participated in that, all of us. If you've had the zone or sometimes loving creating, or you've lost more time in a song, could be a nice bath in nature, on the water. You've had a moment, maybe we didn't pay any attention, but it was outside time. And usually you can figure out, because, oh my God, 2 hours went by, I thought it was a minute. That kind of idea. That's the ideal state of healing that all the ancients were trying to get you back into. Which we can go next then, is the ancients practiced that you were triplet, but in the center, everything was inseparable. So we talk about things like they're separate: mind in harmony, body in balance, energy and state of flow. That's so that you can address a condition from different levels of healing. All the ancient practices did that. Energy is the bridge between mind and body. And so what they always talk about in ancient times, the number one thing they were looking to affect with treatments was typically vital force, which is not a hocus pocus weird thing. You can tell when you look at your own eyes in the mirror or look at other people, you can see their vitality. That's why I say the eyes are the window to the soul kind of idea. You see vitality, even if you don't recognize you're doing it. Human beings and animals can recognize states of unhealthy individuals versus healthy. And they'll tend to feel it and they want to back off. Even if you don't see symptoms, if you see that in their eyes and their complexion, the constitution, you see it through the eyes first. It's the natural way. The ancients taught that. Energy, 20 minutes, okay. The way that you talk about energy, what was it typically the words they used in all these different cultures? What's the...
Chi.
Yeah, chi's the most common. Prana? Yes. So in China, chi, Japan and Korea, ki, in India, prana, in Greece it was pneuma, sostikos or pneuma, in the Roman tongue it was spiritus or spiritu, like vitalis. All those things, even notice spiritus is in there. Spirit was mostly associated with breath, not a conceptual organism or entity through things. It was the force of life flowing in everything. So that's not hocus pocus. That for the last 120 years, because of the Rockefellers, the oil industry wanting to promote pharmaceutical medicine based on oil products, had to discredit all of the thousands of years of medicine and make them look like hocus pocus. They convinced people that were using things for 100 years and their whole family's working super well for something that according to science it didn't work. And then they stopped using it. It was absolutely masterful propaganda that manipulated for 120 years, but now they've lost all their patents. And now that's why you can talk about so many things that you could not talk about before. So everything is in a state of change, like I said. Getting back to this, there's a key difference between ancient, yeah?
I was thinking, wasn't it also like kind of a class thing too?
Oh, yeah.
Because like when I think about my grandmother, did a lot of these remedies, but it was really kind of low class, like farmers, like kind of not sophisticated.
But you know what, there's the other side of that too. Is say the British royals, they would typically use homeopathy, not Western medicine. So they had both sides of that going. A lot of it was because they didn't want to treat you. And a lot of, if you face it, a lot of it, they didn't, the elites, right, class, they didn't care if people died. They only cared if they died. And so a lot of it has a horrid history about population and dealing with the population and being able to properly deal with the population, and that had to do with ratios. Sorry, I could walk on the it's pretty insidious and it feels really negative, and I think you got to see that first to know why it got so far away from actually ancient healing. And the big difference that allowed it to really promote itself, modern medicine, was changing from terrain theory. They didn't call it that back then. Have you heard of this? The argument between the two, Béchamp and Pasteur. Louis Pasteur, pasteurization of milk. That Pasteur is based on the germ theory that things are based, not just germs, but outside forces are pathogenic to you. Whether that be some type of frequency or a bacteria or a mold or some type of poison, right? And that we now need to stimulate, suppress, cut out surgery, or burn. So the whole of modern medicine was based on compounds that could stimulate, suppress, or they do surgery or burn it out. That's still today what they do. So it's stimulate, suppress, cut, or burn. Ancient medicine was terrain theory because Béchamp said to Pasteur, everybody would get sick then. If something goes through, everybody should be sick. Why do so many people not get sick? And he said it's because of the health of the terrain in the organism, which, by the way, mostly has to do with those mucosal moats in your genitourinary tract, lungs, respiratory tract, digestive system. So his whole thing was nourish, cleanse, and balance. That's the ancient way. It even sounds more realistic and natural according to natural rhythms. Sometimes, yeah, you will come swoops of woo, ferocious kind of thing, get rid of. But most of the time, it's, if you think of cleanse or detox kind of idea, nourish and balance. In order to do that, you have to find your center. So all the ancient medicines just took for granted and assumed that you had some type of centering practice where you get out of your head into some type of stillness. And a lot of times that could mean that you mastered an art and you were so good at it, it was effortless then, and you were in the flow. Like when somebody says in the flow, that doesn't mean that you go jump off a cliff with everybody else. That kind of idea, in the flow is in the center. So if you go to the next one, and then I can get into this is the response that they're talking about, that they thought of as well-being. Not just getting rid of a symptom, it was spaciousness, the opposite of stress. Stress, you feel constricted and armored. The opposite of that is space. When I have enough space, I can think, I can move, I can be around people. Openness, you feel open. Authenticity is big. You feel clear and yourself, and you can see things straight, so you feel confident. Authenticity comes with confidence. You don't feel you're being a liar or faking it. And then relaxation was huge. They're always trying to find ways to help you relax. So there's this response that has to do with terrain theory. If you're in that response, the eye of the storm, I call it, you're no longer whipped up in your thoughts, emotions, stances, opinions in the whirlwind. You've dropped, you can see it all. You're not escaping like that meditation thing I told you about. You're not escaping it. You're in the center, you're just not drawn or caught up in it. There's the habit to get drawn into it, and you will, but the more you get in that center, the less likely you are to get so attached back and whip around again. Like I say, the funny one, you watch those Twister movies, you'll see somebody that navigates, they seem to navigate life so well. It's like they're riding a bull that got caught up in the whirlwind and it's going like that. Why can't I do that? That's still stress. They're still in a stress mode. If they get in the center of the storm, they can still ride the bull, but it's, again, they're in the world, not of it. That's no stress, parasympathetic response. If you can get in that, all the things in here that you do, all the exercise, the practices in nature, your communication and connection with people, everything changes. So that's what the ancients were trying to do. The next one. So this is what we're trying to do here on a product type thing. Recovery was never supposed to be a product. I lived in the Netherlands and I was behind the scenes in the ballet, and I wanted to help them, the older dancers, compete against the younger dancers when they got injured. Then it turned into this whole segue thing of all this autoimmune disease was out of control in ballet, and I didn't know why. And then I got to see a weigh-in. After living there for a year, I went to see a weigh-in. I didn't go to see the weigh-in, sorry. I was there and they were weighing all the female dancers. And I thought that was already really like, whoa, movie. Then he said to one girl, he said, if you don't lose 10 pounds in 10 days, you can pack your bags and head back to Georgia. That's when you have one of those moments, you go, oh my God. But then, you know when you have an aha moment, they just figure something, they have eating disorders. It's ripping apart their gut lining and they're absorbing things, and that's what's causing their immune system to basically do the collateral damage. It's trying to get rid of all the stuff that's getting in your blood that shouldn't be in there, because the moat's being damaged and degraded because of high stress. And so I just adjusted that, and it became recovered, didn't have a name, and it was unbelievable, and their erythrocyte sedimentation blood scores were totally normalizing, way beyond all the drugs. And I didn't care, I just wanted to stay there and work behind the scenes. And then I ran out of money, because I told you. And then came back to Canada, we started with horses. And the vets we started with horses that were going to be euthanized and got vets to try it on those horses. Or small animals like ferrets or dogs that were going to be euthanized, try it on them. And the results were mind-blowing. And then my brother took it for his eczema, had his whole life in hospitals all the time. And in 2 months, gone, never came back. His fingers were 2.5 times the thickness, staph infections up his arm. Sometimes his eyes couldn't even open them, so he couldn't go to work. Everybody thought he had a contagious disease, so he couldn't even go to work anymore. And then he took that because he saw what it did to his horse. So this is why I'm really passionate about it. I have not talked really intensely except last year at this event. Everywhere I go, everybody's wanting me to focus on mushrooms, because we're the largest mushroom supplier in Canada, and we want to say what are our key differentiators, and we've been talking about it for 20 years. We gave it away to cancer patients in the Cowichan Valley for 2 years for free. Stage 4 cancer. Everybody was only supposed to live a maximum of 6 weeks. And there's still people alive today that have given thank Christmas 20 years later. You can't talk about any of that But I'm saying that's why we did it. It was free. We never intended to sell it. We were selling recovery in the human and animal side, and just that was our gift kind of Couch and Valley. So we didn't care about margins or doing things that are a little bit less so that people could afford it. So when we finally went to market, because we had to, because a company that was selling from the States was stopped at the border for various reasons. They found out what we were doing. We had to put it to market, so we decided to take way lower margins and just piggyback our marketing with recovery. We've done that ever since. Now there's growers in Canada, 3 growers that were set up by the doctor that we use, Dr. John Holiday. So these kind of things like this recovery, what does it do? So my idea is I was basing myself on ancient traditions. The last part of my life here was I was in science and medicine for the first part of my life until about 2001. After that, since that, I did comparative religion and philosophy full-time for 8 years and then went into, well, this is my 16th year in the Indo-Tibetan tradition. So basically you do philosophy, logic, all these different forms of valid cognition, then you do meditation. Practice. It's basically to look at your mind and see all the ways that you think you are and look straight at that, and nothing holds water, and then you have to sit with that. And it does something to you. Anyway, that's what makes us want to talk about, if you saw before, we'll go to the next one, is how do you change your physical healing, because that's where most people are, is just because that's how we were raised to think about our body, right? And that matter creates consciousness, and they don't care about consciousness because I don't understand it. The ancients said that matter is an expression or appearance of consciousness. Actually, that's what we're coming back to, by the way. Quantum physics is taking us closer and closer and closer back to the way. All we're doing right now, in this whole part of this time, is going back. We're dropping reductionist materialism, which is the basis of who we are, and it works in certain things, so it sounds good, but then it has its really strong limitations. That's the hard question of science, is consciousness. So basically, science doesn't understand the basic idea of how you experience right here, right now. How you're experiencing this right now, how you experience every day, they don't understand any of it, none of it. That's hundreds of years working on, the ancients had a science of mind, and everything makes sense if it's consciousness downward. And if I tripped your mind out right now with a few things, you'd see that, oh my goodness, but we have to get used to it, and so it feels stressful in transition. This product was designed, so recovery, like think autoimmune type progressive conditions, you can integrate it with drugs. My dad, for some of you heard this last year, so my dad his brother died of a heart attack out of the blue at 42. Super good shape, had a lot of stress from a divorce and that, right? So everybody in the family got tested because there were some markers that were not proper. His aorta looked like an old rubber band and exploded. And then he had high hemoglobin. He's not a high altitude trainer, so something's going on, which indicates inflammatory load. My dad got tested and others. My dad had 6 blocks around his heart, 95 to 98%. Did you ever meet my dad? Ed? He might have been there. He might have come with us. He did our countertop, granite countertops in Shawnee Lake, our first test.
20 years ago?
Yeah, that was 27 years ago, yeah.
You were very young then.
Yeah, right? So my dad, he got tested with 6 blocks, 95, 98%. They rushed him to do 6 bypasses. Had a heart attack on the table, dropped to 25% heart function. Had 6 stents, and then had a defibrillator pacemaker installed. On 8 drugs, calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, potassium-sparing diuretics, HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors, aspirin, Coumadin, all the nitro, all of those, which are very dangerous to integrate, even a lot of things here. That's why if you recommend something to somebody and they take it to the cardiologist or oncologist, almost always the cardiologist or oncologist said, don't take it. It's better just not to take something because so many of the drugs are so interactive. So my idea was they gave my dad maximum 7, maybe up to 10 years to live. And so I'm not going for that. So I modified what I was doing with the dancers and that, and then gave it to my dad to take with all his drugs. But you can't say that out there. So he took 3 teaspoons of recovery, only had the powder, with all those drugs. He kept that up and he added the mushrooms when they became available. And my dad lived for 31 years. They had to do 2 replacements of the defibrillator pacemaker, which the company in Texas has never done. So he's a miracle of modern medicine. 31 years instead of 7. and he didn't have a heart attack. He died from a stroke from something they made him take or they wouldn't treat him. And that was just a bit ago. But what I'm saying is, he integrated that with some of the most interactive and problematic drugs. And that's how he stayed alive. There's no other. My dad used just before he turned 80. So he took this and the recovery together. Recovery first. And all high dose. Again, I can't promote that outside because you get in trouble for that because of the way the regulations are. All of this is changing as they start gobbling up our industry. They'll start promoting things to take with drugs. For instance, the drug companies that give you statins, the cholesterol-lowering drugs, originally told you to take it with CoQ10 because it inhibits your body's production of CoQ10. By inhibiting the enzyme involved in that process, then your heart can't protect itself and can't produce proper energy. They said that we should take it with it. That in the time is considered unethical because ethical is a term that's basically trademarked by the pharmaceutical industry, implying that everything else is unethical. You see the word games and everything played with subterfuge. So now everything's changing, exciting. This one with that, this is basically similar to the formula we're giving out to the people that had stage 4 cancer to try to help them with their energy and how they had the last few weeks. We did way different, more than that, and now it's out there. And Immune 7. So this one is about, if you can go back for 1 second, and I'm sorry. See where we're doing this? This one is focused on all three. Recovery is more about focus on physical and energetic parts to come at it. Everything's going to be affected, obviously, your whole sense of being, but one's coming at it stronger from a certain angle. And so this one's all three. This one, when we put it to test for 1.5 years before we applied for Health Canada for our number, the NPN, and they do the investigative work, we did a 1.5 year observational trial, giving it to clinicians, everybody else. And this is the one they said, people that took it, these are clinicians, people in health stores, vets, pet stores, said that they've never taken something that make them feel like, I'll explain is water off the duck's back. Things just don't bother them the same. One woman even put it in her husband's soup or something because she was so stressed. I told her to do it, but I was joking, but I wasn't. I think 2 months later it came back and she said, the people at where her husband worked were talking with her friends saying, what happened to your husband? He was so stressed, the person, he's just calm. And then she said she felt so guilty that she hadn't told him for 2 months. And she was working herself up to tell him, then she told him, we put that in your soup, powder, because it comes in powder too. And then he became a full believer. She was a pharmacist before, and he called her a voodoo doctor, because she got into health, and then he became a total believer. So I think when you create something that's strong enough, all of the products that we're trying to produce, this has always been the agenda because we were never supposed to be a company, was to see if I could beat every drug. It's in my nature to say, I don't think that's very good, all the side effects. Can you do that and better so it keeps getting better? That's what recovery came for. That's what this one came from. By the way, I was in my dad got rushed to the hospital. This is a long time ago. And in Duncan, it's kind of packed, CDA. And so there's all these, the curtains they use when it's so packed with people. And so we're in this little thing curtain. Dad had basically a heart. So he basically went out, and then he came back and he's so gray. If anybody's seen this before, there's no blood flow. He's so gray, and I'm holding my dad's hand as he's laying in the bed, and it's just packed in there with tons of people. You can hear them all talking. And then my dad's looking at me. He can't really talk. And there's a person next to me. I can't see. And they asked about some natural thing. And my dad said, or the doctor said, let's face it. If it doesn't have any side effects, it doesn't work. And I was looking at my dad. He could tell I was listening. And like I said, he just come back and he looks at me and goes, I didn't say anything, but I wanted you so bad because that kind of mentality is that stimulate, suppress, cut, or burn. You're always going to have side effects with that because it's unnatural. Whereas if you do things that are more about cleanse, nourish, and balance, it's a more gentle, natural. It can be strong, but it's also got that. It's taking into consideration you as a whole, not just physically, but psychologically speaking, energetically, and physically. So anyways, these are some of the mushrooms and ashwagandha in here, all organic. What we're doing is working with the ancient Himalayan traditions for their top adaptogens. That you can take these safely with so many things because they don't stimulate and suppress, They help you adapt, whether you're low or high. Those are the ancient medicines. There's certain types of plants and fungi that have that ability in the body to find the balance. And those kind of compounds are generally safe to take with other drugs. For instance, this is an interesting one. This has adaptogenic qualities. Used to be big that your grandmother would put into soups. Starts with a B. This particular food can be mixed with any kind of constitution or aptitude, whether you're intense or subdued or whatever, and it will benefit, is barley. Shilajit is another one. That's why I talk about this. Shilajit can be used for so many conditions. Curcumin can be blended with so many conditions. Turmeric in India and different parts of Asia. So the mushrooms, if I go, this is the key one for us, what we do. Because we weren't trying to sell it, we were trying to capture all of the compounds in a mushroom through its whole life cycle to help the cancer patients to have more energy and feel better. And so we use the entire life cycle. If you get to this next one, what does that mean? You know, some people say use the fruiting body, some say mycelia, and they have all these arguments. Any mycologist would say no. Lion's mane is a perfect example. It's the most popular mushroom. It's what allowed us to expand into mainstream so intensely, because the biggest fear of almost all humans is losing their mind. And there's no drug that touches lion's mane. So it just catapulted us, and now this is the interesting thing. All of that mainstream said all of this is basically useless, expensive pee, voodoo, all that stuff. Lion's mane just proved, no. Now everybody's thinking, what? Were you lying to me? And so they're starting to research things. That's why you're getting different people coming into our industry now. It's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because now the crack, there's a crack. And in that crack, all the ancient medicines are getting re-exposed for what they actually are. This one, in the fruiting body portion, are haricinones. They help with the myelin sheath of your nerves. Think your nerves are like copper wires, and the myelin sheath connective tissue wrapping it is like the yellow, green, blue insulator. And anybody who's worked with electricity knows if there's breaches in that insulator, the energy or the electricity can arc out. And here's the thing: say, well, I don't have MS, but that's typically the breakdown of myelin. Okay, think about. I'm going to list a bunch of things that happen in MS that they measure for. Think of what other condition has this. Okay, so MS, what do they test? If you have a light there, electricity is going there, the sheathing is perfect, that light is really strong. If there's breaches in the outside sheath, which is what these promote the production of, then it's arcing, so that light might flicker, be more dim, or not even go on. So in MS, they test for leg strength. Because your legs are getting a nervous signal. If that signal is not reaching properly from the spinal column, brain, you'll have weak leg strength. Also your eyes, you can't focus them properly. That's reliant on little tiny muscles for the lens and everything, so they can't focus properly, so they blurry vision and double vision. Organ systems decreasing in function. That's MS, that's what they're targeting for. But think about what I just said there. Weakening muscles, your digestion's dropping, your organ function's dropping, and your vision starts going. What other condition is associated with that? Aging, right? Aging. And stress too, hyper stress for prolonged periods. You get weak, tired, your vision goes weird, you start reacting to things, your digestion's off. This helps all of those conditions. That's why it's way bigger than what you thought. This portion here, in the mycelia, the arenaceans, there's at least 17 types, they increase the production and health of the copper cable, the nerve, which is also declining with age and all these conditions and stress. What does that mean? It means every part of your body is functioning better. What also happens when your nerves start breaking down? Remember I said nerves? The nervous response happens before the hormonal cascade associated with stress. Before your adrenals get involved, your nerves get involved first. Like a mother that can hear a sound quick, that's the nervous system. So you have the nervous system's act first. If it breaks down, what can you not do as well? Manage stress. So the more those are breaking down for whatever reason, and stress breaks them down, and that increases your inability to deal with stress, which makes it worse, it's like a domino effect. Both parts of this and the outside structure, the extracellular matrix that the mushroom exudes stuff into, everything is captured with ours. That's, yeah.
Then another word for aging is like a train moving forward with the force. It's called entropy.
Yes, yes. Scientifically speaking, right? So the tendency to break down, that things are meant that start to break down over time, and loss of energy and functionality and structure. So this one compound went outside of this industry and blew people's minds. And it's never going away. It's the largest thing, I think, still in the entire industry. Not just in the mushroom, in the industry. And it had to do with people, if you take high dose of this, anybody who's taken things like magic mushroom with psilocybin, or ayahuasca, or iboga, bufo, DMT, all these things that different shamans or people use to get you out of your head, that can actually help you deal with addiction. This one does at a more gradual level. And so people get afraid of those other ones, and sometimes I think they should, because if you do things like that, including LSD, you could have a mind break, and then you can't deal with society properly, and then, or they think you know better than everybody. You don't understand, that kind of idea. It's almost like you form a new religion. With this one, that's not going to happen, because it happens at a more gradual pace, where you're shedding that tendency to be whipped up in the emotions, thoughts, and everything that you're tied into, and instead you feel more of the zone, which makes you feel more open, but also a lot more clear. That's the thing about people, they say, they do all these things, like, or you're meditating, it makes you dumb. No, it doesn't. It makes you super precise and clear if you actually take it into the world. And these things can help you find that center more readily and do the things then that feel like will take it even deeper. I'm not talking about trying to go esoteric or anything here. I'm talking about centering. In ancient times, they didn't have all this at us all the time. It's frenetic. Everybody knows it's frenetic. We're not really meant to live in this type of thing. And people don't even turn the things off right before bed. And now they know all the things that does to you. And when you take somebody off balance like that all the time, whether this is what's happening or not, it's way easier to control people when they're off balance all the time. Because I just don't know how to get, you just do it, I don't care. If you're balanced, it's like you're going, it's all about self-reliance. So the ancients taught this. Go to the next one. That's why we use the whole life cycle. Then we put it in a chamber of high pressure, condensed, freezing air with a cyclone action, which makes the particles bombard, and it breaks open the fiber and releases all the actives. You don't need to extract anything. It's all broken out of the fiber, and then the fiber is broken into tiny strands, the chitin, which is like crab shell, which has qualities of helping you control your appetite. Binding excess fat and things in your blood, helping with blood sugar, they're actually beneficial. When you extract, you get rid of all that. So this is the way the ancients did it, but not with this machine. They would be proud of this. What did they do? They ground things up, put them in soups, cooked them for days, and then you drank the whole thing. It was not an extract. I had to do it for 2 years. It's not like this thing you can see through. It's black and brown and thick and floating, and you have to drink it. That's water soluble, fat soluble, amphipathic, extracellular compounds, everything is in there. So this is what we're trying to preserve, and that's why we did this. And again, we weren't trying to sell this. We did this because we knew the cancer patients have a hard time digesting and even swallowing. So you have to make it so they can absorb right away in the mouth, which is what this does, and all the way down and capture all of the compounds in the life cycle. Not just a few compounds, because there's data on them when they inject them. There's hundreds of different compounds that they don't know, like they haven't studied yet, in just one type of mushroom. Hundreds of them. Not just polysaccharides and their underlying beta-glucans or terpenes, hundreds of compounds. Yeah.
Isn't reishi the most studied?
Yes. Yeah. For blood pressure and mental clarity and relaxation and sleep. And now cordyceps and lion's mane go up. Cordyceps is more geared to adrenal exhaustion. It's the one that's the most expensive natural product. Cordyceps, your adrenals sit on top of your kidneys, so they're called the suprarenals, right? And so they're included in the meridians of Chinese and Tibetan medicine. So when they say kidney meridian, they also mean the adrenal function. Most things when you learn about kidney meridian are associated with adrenal function. And over time you lose your ability to your adrenals to function, so you can't handle stress as well, so you don't balance with life as easily. That's why you break down faster and faster and faster. They use cordyceps to basically help you be more youthful in the world. This is what micronizing does. Yeah, from that one back, like that, tied up in fiber, break it open, and it preserves over 95% guaranteed preservation of actives. If you ground it, if you have a crystalline structure that's like a 40 to 60 mesh, you drop it and fall on the ground. The larger the number, the tinier the particles. So if it's a 100 mesh, it'd start floating and you might taste something I had in my hand if I blew it. If I blew a 40 to 60 mesh, it would just drop on the ground. Just in front of me. So the idea is you can't grind things past crystalline size. Otherwise you damage up to 95% of the actives. That's why they extract with hot water, with carbon dioxide, with alcohol, hexane. This way preserves everything, and you don't have to extract. You start with a 40 to 60 mesh, everything's there, you just break it open. And it's freezing so it fractures more easily, the fiber. Next one. So if I don't go through, because I know we don't have time here, each mushroom has a specificity. They all help with your immune system at certain levels of strength. They all help with stress relief at certain levels of strength. But some are more focused on, say, cancer. Some are more focused on brain health. Some are more focused on liver health, things like that. If you combine them together, there's major overlap. So you could use, say, 50 milligrams of something in combination and get the same effects as 5 grams of something singularly. So mushrooms are really interesting. When you combine small doses together, there's so much overlap that you get all the functionality, but you also get specificity on certain things. And this is why we combine them. That's why you see most mushroom things are combos. When people get into mushrooms, they see combos work better, they make more sense, they provide you with a much more broad spectrum activity. And our biggest one is the Complete 360 that I showed you earlier. And then we're trying to find less expensive ways for people to take it, because especially you're dealing with your mind mostly and your ability to deal with stress. So anything else you take with this, again, it helps absorb and assimilate because you're in a de-stressed state. So that's the Complete 360. This one here, Shilajit, is another thing that always should have been at the top. I wanted to do this 11 years ago, but I knew that nobody would take it except for hardcore, because there's 2 things about it when it's not processed. This is a hot water extract. Everyone ate this because they saw goats eating it in the Himalayas, and they act like they're way younger and could compete. And Alexander the Great, when he was rushing down to fight, they expected them when they're coming into India that they would be all so tired and wimped out. No, they were eating Shilajit the whole way, and you can read up on it. And they came down like crazy berserkers. That was just Shilajit. Like chia seeds are another one, all these superfoods. So, but Shilajit is basically an exudate. Yeah?
So, what is Shilajit?
Yeah, so Shilajit is an exudate it's basically organic decomposing matter. And over thousands to millions of years in the Himalayas, 1 to 5 kilometers up, it's slowly exuding upward and bringing the minerals with it out of the rock in certain types of rock. So the one we use has over 40 minerals, and then all this matter that's come up, and so it's completely sustainable. They just keep harvesting. That's what they were using. This one you can use with any constitution. It basically is used for overall youthfulness, women and men, hormonal balance, increasing testosterone in men, increasing DHEA in both men and women. I'm talking about significant level increases. Oxygenation, if you use it, it's basically undeniable. The thing is, what is Shilajit then? Okay, everybody's calling things Shilajit now. People that used to call their product fulvic acid, that's produced, say, from anywhere in North America in the peat bogs. Once Shilajit started getting really hot, because it has fulvic acid, they started calling their fulvic acid Shilajit. Anybody in Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine would say, no, that is not Shilajit. That's not Shilajit. Shilajit is produced 1 to 5 kilometers up, has major mineralization. There's no pesticides and heavy metals and radiation. That ground level stuff is sinking in. So it's not the same thing. Fine, you can take it, but that's not Shilajit. That's fulvic acid. Fulvic acid has benefits in hydroponics and plant. The fulvic acid by the way, have you heard of humic acid? They're both humic substances, compounds of decay, plants and animal. Humic acid is larger and less soluble at a pH. Fulvic acid is smaller and has a broader pH range of solubility. What does that mean? It's driving minerals and antioxidants into the mitochondria, which produce all your energy. You want to have it small, broader pH so you can drive it at any health level depending on what your pH level is. And a lot of people are very acidic. When you're very acidic, from what your diet, stress and everything, and catabolism, you can't absorb oxygen properly. What's the primary condition if you don't get enough oxygen into your system? What's the primary condition that will develop pretty intensely in a low or hypoxic environment? Cancer. That's why they say one thing you can do if people have cancer, if you're trying to change your pH so you can get more oxygen flow, which cancer cells don't thrive in a hyperoxic environment, is baking soda. And trimethylglycine, TMG betaine, or dimethylglycine, they use that in the horse industry to prevent them from tying up because they increase the oxygen load in the body. That deters cancer cells from forming. Because cancer cells lose their ability to signal when to stop dividing. That's all cancer is. They lose cell-to-cell contact inhibition. They keep growing into a mass that impinges on a blood vessel or a nerve or an organ system, then you could die or have problems. You're trying to get them to start recognizing when to stop dividing again. That takes enough oxygen. So anyways, the mushrooms and things like that increase oxygenation, change your microbiome. And then Shilajit increases oxygen flow through your whole body. Our Shilajit also has another compound called urolithins in it. Are you familiar with these? Okay, that's why we didn't do it. Shilajit tastes bad by itself, and it actually kind of smells not so good. So I thought, how are we going to do this? Then we found this company's doing this. Is the other compound that has urolithins protects your DNA through your whole body, so it's anti-aging in a big way. Is a way better tasting food that became big in the health industry and grocery stores a few years back. Do you know what it is? It's red. You drink it a lot in juices. Pardon? Nope. It's think of a foreign fruit. Pomegranate. Pomegranate has urolithins just like Shilajit that's produced 1 to 5 kilometers up. So it's DNA protective. You could combine it with your pomegranate juice. So that's Shilajit. I feel like if you wanted to take mind, body, energy in a really powerful foundation stack, that would be the recovery. The complete recovery is mostly physical. Complete 360 is mostly mind. And the Shilajit is mostly the energy. So then you got all 3 parts of the Triskel together. And then anything else you want to do. I just took recovery and complete. I'll never ever quit them. I've been taking them for 20 years. Recovery for 30-something years. I'll never stop. And then the Shilajit we've had for the last few years. I added that. It does something to you that's a bit different. I don't know if it was last time I was here when we just started that. I don't think so. As I told them, I was taking a bit, right? When I said that? And I felt like, you know, if you exercise, you can tell really quickly if something. I've been taking all these things and I feel like I do pretty good at my age and that. But when I took that in, I feel like I can do a lot more. And it does not increase testosterone, by the way, in women, only in men, indicating it affects the testes. But it affects DHEA, which I said earlier. Anybody that's doing bioidentical hormone therapy or anything to do with PMS or premenstrual tension, any of those, DHEA is like a primary thing to shift in there because it's a mother hormone. And that decreases with age like glutathione in the liver. You used to be able to get that here or compound it. Now you have to buy it from the US or you have to get special rights or a doctor involved. What 2 things that increase DHEA quite significantly are ashwagandha and Shilajit. So those are both serious anti-aging compounds that the ancients incorporated all through the Himalayan region. And it even proves itself in goats, like with cordyceps. They go into like lot more muscularity, less fat, younger, sustaining and withstand certain conditions they usually have.
Are you saying then that DHEA is a supplement that could substitute bioidentical hormones?
They usually integrate it with it. So they basically have estrogen or certain types of estrogen, because there's 3 types, with progesterone, and DHEA. The safer bet though, overall, because those two things can interact with people, say they have cancer or some type of hormonal issue, is DHEA, because that's a mother and that can help balance the other two. So luckily where we live, we have great functional medicine doctors that can work with bioidentical hormone therapy. DHEA is typically added more and more and more because of all the benefits they see with it. Especially if someone's only been taking estrogen or estrogen and progesterone, then they add DHEA. It could be a completely different scenario.
So you can't just take the DHEA.
Yeah, you can take that too, but I'm not going to go outside of a doctor's thing. But DHEA is a primary anti-aging hormone, kind of like glutathione is to the liver. I can open up questions too now.
So where do we source the mushrooms and where do you produce them?
What was the second one?
Where you produce the product.
So we produce it. Okay, this is a really interesting question. Almost no companies are left that manufacture. I don't know if you knew that. Most companies in the industry in North America are marketing companies, which is fine, and they get all their product produced by private label manufacturers. Huge private label. We're a Canadian company. We just built 2 more facilities just outside of Duncan in the Cowichan Valley. We produce human and animal, and all the animals produced with human standards. And then our mushrooms we used to get them all from the US. Dr. John Holliday is the one that set it all up. He's a double PhD in engineering and microbiology. He used the nuclear engineering to develop different technologies in mechanics to then basically work on mushrooms to produce higher levels. Now, this is what we've been waiting for the whole time. He set up 3 facilities in Canada. 2 of them are operational. And not only are they set up in Canada, all certified organic, grown on organic sorghum. So huge levels of trace minerals. They're superfoods already. But you'd be proud of the Canadians. You know when you say, I want it produced in our country no matter what, all this stuff? Yeah, but what if they do it in a crappy way? You know what I mean? So the Canadians here, we've toured the facility several times. They are top-notch people that totally love mushrooms.
Where are they?
So one is in the Vernon Kelowna area. 2 of them actually are. I want to talk about what they're doing. They haven't started yet. The other one's in Ontario. They look like you're in spaceships. They're amazing facilities. The one facility is experimenting like the ancients did when they had seasonality, right? So you pick certain things at different times of the year because they knew they were producing different qualitative aspects. We would say we could quantify different qualities or compounds they're producing at different times of the year. Like anybody that watched that movie, it was that book where that guy went to Alaska and he ate that wild garlic, whatever, at the wrong time of the year, and they didn't even know at the wrong time of the year, and it caused him stomach, and he died. Into the Wild, right? That book and movie. Anyways, these ones at different times of the year they produce different compounds, and when they're exposed to different things, they produce different compounds. So this guy is taking what the Soviets were doing because they didn't want to depend on pharmaceutical industry that's Western. In pilot facilities for the last couple of years at least, he's been exposing different mushrooms to different frequencies, different lights, different sound scores. This is cool. He imported a Mongolian yurt because of its internal round structures, kind of like Rudolf Steiner with the answer. So changing the structure of the inside of the building, playing musical scores of different types with different lights and pulses, and exposing them in controlled environments to see what happened then under HPLC to the different fragments of compounds that were being produced and at what ratios. And he found what the Soviets already knew: you could keep the whole profile of a plant or a fungi, alter it with how you're growing it so that it will spike certain compounds. Then you can perfect what you're doing with sound, light, vibration, and music scores and the shape of the structure to then target and standardize compounds produced for specific conditions while maintaining the integrity of all the rest. So that's where mushrooms are going. And Canada is a big part of that, if not at the front of it. So anyway, super exciting. Yep.
So one of your products that you would recommend over others for someone who has intense osteoarthritis?
Yeah, the recovery, for sure. Yeah. Actually, we just had, this is interesting. So on the other coast, when I was just in Moncton, there's a new chain. It used to be They were set up, it's called Simply for Life, there's a bunch of them, as a healthy weight management program years ago. To compete against all these things that tell you to buy all these supplements and all this stuff. Is to basically sit with you, see where you're at a few times a month, and see what things you might fare well with in your diet, right? Now they became bigger. They're getting it in supplements now, because another chain, Nutters, is, regardless, one of the guys is really smart. He was there asking questions. When I was doing the presentation, people literally were taking recovery in the audience while I was talking. They'd never heard of it before because of how I was presenting. He just got back to us after a few days. He said, how long does this stuff take to work? And he had a longer email, that's the gist of it. And he had severe, basically osteoarthritis and degeneration in his back. And he said every 20 minutes he wakes up in excruciating pain since 2022 when he was diagnosed in April to now. 12 days after, on recovery, but it was already happening in 2 days. 12 days in at the full dose, he just went full dose right away, 3 teaspoons a day. We gave him that and the Complete 360. Those two, he took 4 of the Complete 360 and 2 to 3 teaspoons of recovery. This is 12 days later, yesterday. He said that he does not wake up, has zero pain, his back is 99%. And then he showed us in the gym on top of 2 barbells, and he had those slings on his, doing push-ups like that. He said if you had seen him before and all the people in the gym, he could only do mild things in the gym. This is only 12 days in. So we're going to be doing a presentation for them tomorrow, but all we have to do is get him to talk. So the idea is the recovery for osteoarthritis, for pain anywhere in the body, inflammation, it just gets better and better and better. And we can't say it out loud because that's not the way the regs work. Well, my dad took it for 31 years, and he was only supposed to live 7 to 10. And mentally, he was perfect right to the end, even physically as good as you possibly could be. And I like to say he died between his 2 favorite woodworking machines. I mean, he had a quality of life, that's what I mean. And animals, our animal division is big. You cannot trick an animal. There's no other company like us in Canada that I know of that has that kind of quality. We are rated as the top horse product in the world after they studied 17 products together. Even when injections failed for osteoarthritis, degenerative joint disease in the neck and back, and chronic tendinosis, every horse had 80 to 100% recovery in 3 to 5 weeks, even if they failed in every other product. So again, I wasn't making this thinking about margins or selling it or anything. I just wanted to stay in the Netherlands and work behind the scenes. Which is weird, you know what? I didn't even like ballet, and then I started liking it because you're working with. You see how stressed out they are? It's intense. It's because they have eating disorders. They smoke tons to try to make weight, so everything's all over the place. Even if you smoke, if you were in the ballet facilities, you have a hard time breathing. So osteo is recovery. If you add the Complete with it, your mind and everything more calm, so you can absorb and assimilate things better, and everything starts to work better. Having said that, just recovery. I used to walk like this when I was in my 20s for a year and a half. He told me I would never get better, and I still worked in the pharmacy. And then finally the thing that I was working with in the Netherlands came here, so I in the compounding pharmacy in Vancouver, mixed it, and in 2 weeks I was straight again. I literally was at the point, if anybody might know this, I've been in chronic pain, I didn't care if my life was to end there, I would not have cared. Same as people with chronic migraines, which I had when I was young too. It's like, I don't even care if I live right now, because why would you want this? And they said with my back, it's just going to get worse.
What was the cause of it?
So I went off a cliff when I was 10 because I didn't want to wait for the rest of them, and it looked like a good thing, but it was actually a snowbank. Dropped 2 stories onto my back. And then when I was 17, I was defense, and they took out our goalie, and I didn't know that. I was going full speed backwards, flipped over the goalie, but the net had been taken out, and the spike was still in the net, so I was impaled in the same spot, ripped my back. And then when I was managing a pharmacy, I was sick. I got called in sick because everybody was sick, and I was too lazy to go get the boxes outside, so I just carried a whole bunch. And then someone swung the flinging door, and it went like that. And the pharmacist and the naturopath were standing there. And they said you could hear my back go, and then I couldn't walk at all for 2 weeks. I had to go like this to get to the bathroom. To get from me to you, it took me like half an hour. So I didn't even want to drink water or anything because I didn't want to have to go to the bathroom. It was horrible. So I've been there, but my back thing they said was never. It was just getting, and it was just getting worse. And I was in my mid-20s. So this is like, for me, it was life-changing. And for Justin, our VP of sales, life-changing. For this guy, life-changing. That's what this was for. We have stories with animals. The first one was with a horse. They were going to euthanize it in 10 days. I did a lecture for 50 vets. It was done in an attack and feed store. They donated the space. She listened to me. They had a horse. Her husband's horse was a thoroughbred ex-racer that had been beaten and everything, and they had it. 3 of its legs couldn't move anymore, so it just stood there, and they had to walk up to feed it. And this is a funny story, kind of, but it also blew my mind. He got a hold of my number. They convinced him to use it on the horse. Then he got a hold of my number, and he called me. I didn't know who it was first, and he said, this such and such. He's like this big ex-Navy Ranger, 6'4", rough kind of guy, like a man kind of guy. He called me and he said, this is Jason Watkin. I said, yeah, I didn't know who it was. He said who it was, and he said, does this product, didn't have a name yet, does this product turn horses, I'll use subdued form, into a-holes? And I was so proud of myself, I say this sometimes. I said, I don't know, was it an a-hole before? And he said, yes! And that was his way of thanking me. Apparently, after about 2 weeks, it was supposed to be put down in 10 days. After 2 weeks, it was chasing all the other horses and wouldn't let them eat the food because it was an alpha. And then I went back about 2 or 3 months later, and I saw him. I started talking to him, and I said, seen anything else? He said, yeah, we tried on a whole bunch of horses, exact same results. And I said, anything else you've seen? Then I could see his eyes glazed, and he got a lump in his throat. He just turned around and walked away. And then I saw his wife walking towards me. I go, and she goes, I said, what happened? And she said, he said it's working on all the horses. So he gave the horse product to his dog, and his dog was a dog every Sunday night watched football with him. Jumped up on his lap. Last 2.5 years had been on the ground. Gave him the product, and I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, and the dog was jumping back up on his lap. So to me, I thought, you know when you're just focused on the scientific thing of it, oh, this is doing this and this, but then I saw how emotional that was, and that kind of guy, to me, I don't know, that just gets me when someone's like, he's going to be cynical, whatever you say, this, that, and he completely broke down. And animals do it for us, our company, they do it for us. We still, human and animal stories would blow your mind. We're not allowed to share, 80 or 90% we're not allowed to share. Because these work for really serious things, right? People know that, the word gets out, but we cannot share any of that. So all we can do is hope that people get the word out. Plus, it feels like, you know, when you talk about livelihood, all of us just feel like we're doing something, our livelihood, that's meaningful. It feels good. And Adam was a triathlete, and we were sponsoring him. And then when he retires, he likes working for us. Now, he just became the director of education, and we're super good friends, and we're doing the podcast together. And then our VP of sales, Justin, he was a power lifter. His whole leg had wasted away. He had him on 2 powerful narcotics. They said it's just going to go down here. They're probably going to get different surgeries. And then this guy came to this attack and feed store. No, he went into attack and feed store, and the guy said, you got to take this stuff, and made him eat the powder right there, the horse stuff. So like made him buckle, and then I don't know how much longer, it wasn't very long, all the muscularity is coming back. He was a powerlifter before, lost everything. All the muscularity came right back. He started powerlifting again, huge. The guy's super strong. Anyway, then he ended up coming to work for us because it changed his entire life. So this, to me, this for animals, when you see what it does for animals, quality of life right to the end, for their gut health and everything, recovery, and their joint health, and their skin. You cannot, if you take recovery properly, you cannot deny how much faster and better your nails grow, hair, and the changes to your skin and your eyes. You'll just see that happen.
Did you say recovery is for gut health too?
Yeah, gut health too. That's what did for my brother and me. I was in the hospital. They thought I had cancer, and they put me in cancer wards as a kid. A few times they didn't know what was wrong with me. And I think it was probably just really allergic to certain foods. It would make me buckle over, and I couldn't actually unravel for 2 days sometimes. But mine was the gut degeneration. Right? And then they just list you that you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, spastic colitis, all right? All of it.
IBS. Irritated.
And then you talk about take probiotics. But if you have a dysfunctional moat, then the type of microbiome that you have is totally different than if you have a functional moat. So if you don't have a functional moat, like I said, yeast will turn into a pleomorph and root into your underlying epithelia. Other organisms do the same, or they produce different compounds because they feed differently. That gets into your blood, and they make you crave certain foods and alcohol and things like that. So what you crave and everything is not just you. Why can't I stop it? They're down there going, like that. They're making you actually crave things to eat. And some of the microbes produce up to 95% of compounds like serotonin. They produce most of your neurotransmitters in some cases. So the idea is, if you can change your microbiome, how do you do that? You have to change the moat first, or it won't work. You can take cranberry, and helps it drop off. You can take all these antimicrobial substances. If you're not de-stressed and this is not functional, this surface area from your mouth to your rectum, if you took it out and flattened it, in most adults is the size of a tennis court of surface area. That's way different than the skin. That's just that. Then you have the respiratory tract you're taking things through, and your genitourinary tract you're taking things through, right? And your eyes, and your mouth and your nose. All those things are absorbing things from outside here. Why do I get allergic? Why do I get sensitive? All these different, why am I getting inflammation? Why do I have no energy? Because your moat's breaking down. And the moat, this is an interesting way of thinking of your castle. I did one of these on Swallow the Truth. We did an immune system analogy with a castle. If you create this moat, this mucosal surface with a moat outside a castle, that's what keeps things out first. The best way to support your immune system is to keep things out that shouldn't get in. That's your moat. In your skin, most of your moat. What lives in the moat? Alligators, crocodiles, piranha, barracuda. Who's going to go through that? That's your microbiome. They're defending you. They have to have a functional moat. If that starts degrading, piranha and barracuda and crocodile and alligators, they don't do very well in the water. They're slow or they die. That's the same as you. How do you change that? By taking tons of probiotics and yogurt and everything? No. First you have to get the microbiome so it's producing. the moat, and then you take the probiotics with it, or change your eating patterns with lots of water-soluble fibers and that, changes your whole microbiome. By the way, this is a huge thing. This is basically free advice. You know how they talk about forever plastics are everywhere? And most of us have at least a credit card worth of microplastics in our body, or way more. That's the average or minimum. How do you get rid of it? They didn't know how to get rid of it, the forever plastics. One thing they just released a couple months ago is if you take the beta-glucans from oats, which that's a problem sometimes, it's got to be certified organic because oats are manipulated, right? Let's say certified organic oats and mushrooms, they actually don't just help you deal with the microplastics that are there, they're depleting them, they're taking it out of your from your blood, out of your digestive tract and out. They can measure that. That means everybody should be taking water-soluble fibers.
Like a binder?
They bind them up. And even activated charcoal is a great thing to take a little bit of it each day. They're binding different endotoxins that are in your gut, so you don't absorb them into your body. One of these things are super cheap to do. Like MSM is so cheap. The things that it does would blow your mind with pain and cancer and skin and in the bath, like with eczema and serious dermatitis and that, or serious cuts. They used to put sulfur on for infection, silver nitrate and sulfur. And then all the drugs came out and supplanted all the cheap things. MSM is super cheap. If you got somebody that's struggling with so many things that I can only afford to take something cheap, give them MSM. And it absorbs in through your skin in a bath, super non-toxic, and immediately MSM's in the recovery, but you can also buy it by itself. It's super inexpensive, and you pour it in your tub, and it makes the water feel like silk. You could mix it with Epsom salts. It's better than Epsom salts, but you could mix them together. You get it.
What exactly is that?
So methyl sulfonyl. Have you ever heard of DMSO? Dimethyl sulfoxide is a compound that they use as a solvent with drugs or herbs that takes things through the skin, especially in the veterinary industry. And it's a super powerful analgesic, and it's used in the treatment of cancer in a big way. So that's the things that got targeted the hardest for the last 120 years. Cancer is a big racket, right? It's a huge industry. Anything that has cancer benefits took off. But most of the qualitative aspects that DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, achieves are due to its basically completely safe compound called MSM, methyl sulfonyl-methane, also known as dimethyl sulfone. So dimethyl sulfoxide can cause some problems with eye health or nerve tingling if you use too much of it, and it's a solvent. MSM doesn't cause any of those problems, and it's not a solvent, but it achieves all the pain relieving, analgesic qualities, all the antimicrobial properties.
How do you put it down? You buy it as
Just a powder, just poured in, just like Epsom salts, and it's super cheap.
Where do you get it?
So we're the largest purchaser in all of Canada. We even sell back to suppliers to sell to other companies. That's what we buy for horses now. Yeah.
Oh,
I just don't want to interrupt. We're having like a great time here. We have time for maybe 2 more questions, and then we have to wrap
And
up.
what time is it?
It's 8:15.
And I have to go anyway.
Okay, sounds
I'll
good.
take the. Yep.
so your products do, like, we don't buy them today, can we come here and buy them?
Yeah.
Do we
Yeah.
order them, or
These
what?
guys have a really strong assortment of our products.
Okay.
The Recovery Complete, all the different mushrooms, MSM, Shilajit, our probiotics, which you take 1 a day. They're heat stable. They're human strains. So if you're trying to restore gut health, which is huge, get your stress under control, replace this, so Recovery and Complete, then you could add a probiotic. Just 1 a day. Yeah.
So many activities?
Same. And you know what? People that think they're celiac because they react a lot to glutens and obviously gluten's not gluten anymore. And the gluten-gliadin ratio in that is altered with all these GMO types. If you alter the gluten and the gliadin, the starch ratio, it makes them more reactive. Plus there's also different compounds in it. So if you restore the gut lining, then your body gets a chance to break things up through the digestive system inside that lining before they get through into your blood. That's what causes the problem with celiac. So some people can start eating meat again if they take recovery long enough. That's been a constant thing for us to see. That's normal.
I know you're talking about lion's mane for like moves
Yep.
and stuff, but what do you recommend for it? Because it's like using sort of causes restless legs. It's really annoying.
100% magnesium and electrolytes
Yeah,
are
I see
first,
that.
and then I would do complete 360 with that.
So what we're doing.
Complete 360 is basically helps you relax, but in a clear way. Because restless legs are also tied to heart too, right? And brain function. If you catch that first, if you have restless leg syndrome all the time, it can indicate a nervous system activation that then affects other conditions of the mind and the heart. Magnesium at high dose is typically, we have to take a proper form that absorbs properly, otherwise it acts more like laxative. So in other words, magnesium oxides and carbonates and sulfates are more of a laxative effect. The glycinates and chelates may absorb in your body. Recovery also for restless leg, it's the same idea. That has magnesium in it. Has the magnesium ascorbate, vitamin C, and MSM has antispasmodic effects. So do the polyphenols in a lot of berries and things and teas. They can help with the restless leg.
So if you're going to do one, would you recommend 360 or the recovery?
I would say recovery. We've already seen that over the past 25 years. Yeah, they just work up the dose, and but other things too, you see. That's what we're doing. Yep.
What about people who are COVID or vaccine injured?
Okay, so then this is where I have a fair amount of expertise. This is why I got into issues with the Canadian government, and then we won big, but now I've got to do something. Up until 2020, the way that we treated anything as far as the pandemic was the exact opposite of what we just did. So everybody that was trying to tell them that, they called you a conspiracy theorist, but we're just saying what we've done for 60 years. Okay, that's besides the point. Now we got to deal with what happened. So now they found, since 2021 April until now, that a large percentage of people that took 2 or more vaccines are producing spike protein at the same level as when they first had it. They said that wasn't possible, so it did integrate and it's pushing it. So what do? What's that going to do? It's going to block blood flow, cause inflammatory issues, which lead to what they call turbo cancers, because you can't get proper oxygen in blood flow. The other thing, cardiovascular disease and neurological malfunction, all need increased circulation oxygenation. So constant release of spike protein causes inflammatory bursts, degradation, glycation, which inhibits blood flow and oxygenation. So if I was that, I'm going to talk about overall what you would do is I would 100% be taking the enzyme bromelain and nattokinase on an empty stomach.
That's the same thing as Dr. Marshala.
Yes, and so before he did that, because he was still mainstream, we were already talking about this. Bromelain used to be in recovery, but the government made us take it out because they said you can only use those enzymes 2 weeks at a time maximum, and obviously we want people to take it, so we had to take it out. Bromelain has tons of data as a fibrinolytic agent. It breaks down plaques, increases blood flow, but also in the blood, if you don't take it with food, breaks down spike protein. So that enhances blood flow, which enhances oxygenation. The other thing, number 2, is those enzymes morning and night, before you take anything at the end of the night. Then they work on an empty blood or empty digestive tract. The other one is, again, that one K2MK7, vitamin K2MK7 from natto bean. We'll take out all the plaque formation and everything in there and draw the calcium into the bone, but by ripping apart the plaque, increases your circulation again. And a lot of that damage is induced now by spike protein that used to be just from stress or diabetes, right? Now it's caused by this chronic release of spike. So you got to deal with the spike, which is the enzymes. You got to deal with the blood flow issues with K2MK7. And then if you want to increase oxygenation, I'd be taking the Shilajit. Recovery and all those things are awesome. Like curcumin, they're all anti-inflammatories. Anything, curcumin's especially powerful, boswellic acid, all those things. But those enzymes are crucial. And so is oxygenation. Yeah. Just a couple a day, 2 little, and they're tiny. Yeah, empty stomach. I would do. You know what? There's in the West. There's not really anything such thing as an empty stomach. So when they keep saying that's not really accurate, but we do it. Yeah. Yes.
Do you have books on what you've done with all the things you talked about today?
So we're doing more and more and more with our website. We're going to add back. We decided we had a marketing firm. They're great, but people don't understand what we're trying to share because it's pioneering, right? So we're doing it all ourselves as of December 1st. We're going to add back tons of blogs, start doing email out. So if you want to subscribe to the email, get tons of info with really fun blogs and humor and everything, but really strong.
Really understanding what it's doing for you.
So that's where, if you go to the Swallow the Truth and start watching those episodes, you get a bigger picture of what we're trying to say every time we weave. Even if we're talking about bankers, we'll weave in the idea of body, energy, mind, and center, and how you do that, and what things you could take. But also there's modules we're doing. We'll do some for the public. But the Swallow the Truth is the best way for sure.
You know, we're hearing about for everybody that's older, like I'm 68, so we're all in that. It's about the brain.
Yes.
About what's happening because we're getting older, and we never thought that we would have things like this happening.
Yep.
Because everything else was going pretty darn good.
Yep.
So that's what I'm most concerned
Yeah.
about.
So for me, if you take recovery and complete 360, you've got your foundations covered. You can add other things on top of that, but you're getting mind, body, energy associated with as you age, or entropy, as you're saying right there. It's a part of life, but you want to live to your fullest, obviously, the end. And that's where this is what it's doing. And the mind is a big one.
I want to stay for quite a while.
Yes.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
I love
Right? But if you lose your mind, you don't
Yes,
care.
exactly.
And when you start, it's the stage. I used to work at the elderly care facility in Duncan. It was the stage when you know you still know what's happening is the worst of all. And there was so much anger and frustration and everything. You'd see it all the time. So I got exposed to that at 17 years old. And maybe all these things that influence you, you don't know why. That was influencing me. I saw a man die 2 weeks after his wife, and he was totally healthy. I saw a man's hair go in 3 weeks, gray, because his wife died. How the heck does that even happen? I'm in the science. I don't even understand how that happens. So that's how much stress can influence you if it's condensed. Imagine if it's happening all the time. Oh, by the way, if you want to, all the things I talk about, stress right there. If you want to see what it is, look up long-term use of corticosteroids. Cortisone, prednisone, dexamethasone, one of those. Long-term use of corticosteroids, or Cushing's syndrome. And you'll see all the things that happen there are like accelerated aging. And then what does that mean? If you're chronically stressed, which I was talking about, what does it mean? It's doing that. I better get going. But it was awesome having you guys. I don't think I don't know what you're doing in the store today, but we might want to tell them. And then, thank you.